And there's a lot of challenging things about parenting. It's not always easy by any means. Right now, we're going through different sleep regressions with the 5, 6 month old, and we're trying to be able to get sleep. Figure it out. If you see me tired online, that might be the reason why. But parenting and dealing with the emotions is what we're going to try to touch on and talk through today. So, at the time of this recording, I've got a 6 month old and I've also got a 5.5 year old. And the 5.5 year old is going on 13, 14. So, like, attitude, emotions, like, she's coming into, like, this is new, like these different pieces. And I'm also coming into the place of realizing, hey, what I'm saying, the age that she's at, affects her in a lot different ways than what it did before. Now, not that I was like mean and aggressive and abusive before, but I'm saying like different things. So, for instance, sarcasm is like a big one, right? So, like my wife and I talking, and I say something, and then our daughter hears it, and she's like, "Oh my gosh," and different things like that that oftentimes can be triggering that I'm not thinking about. I'll say something and it'll be kind of like off the cuff, and it won't be like a mean piece, but it'll be like my wife will be like, she didn't understand what you were talking about, or she thought you were gonna take this away, or she thought you were gonna do this. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Getting to a place of like understanding 5 year old logic. Well, they can't really logic a ton right now, but getting ready like to understand all that stuff has been a challenge and has been difficult. One of the difficult pieces inside of it has just been talking and dealing with emotions. Now, my daughter is very emotional. Um, yeah, very emotional. I was gonna say sometimes, but a lot of times she's very emotional. Now, there's different things that'll trigger it. There's different things that'll make her more emotional or less emotional, right? So, like if she's extremely tired, obviously more emotional. If she eats red 40, obviously way more emotional. She goes from a nice kid to a crazy kid. So we don't eat that. But like a piece of like all of the emotions is trying to be able to figure out, how do I actually hold space and deal with that? How do I actually help her? But I have to also be able to help myself in that process. One of the things that can be triggering is like a whining or a whiny tone. And that just comes from childhood. That just comes from past pieces that trigger inside of me. So like that's happening, and I'm just like, ah. Sometimes in one that's like another way is like sometimes like coughing. It's really weird. But it's like a piece of like she'll be coughing, and it'll just be like one of those things that she can't stop. And it's not like an asthma, it'll just be like a cough and then come back later, cough, like cough, cough. And it'll be something that just like there'll be a piece inside of me just be like, and it's like frustrating. It's weird. Like there's no logical reason why I should be frustrated at her. And I'm not like mad at her, but it's something that I realize is some type of a trigger. And it goes back to something. I don't know exactly about that. So, in talking through some of this, like there's aspects where she will get triggered, frustrated, upset, all the different types of things, and dealing with her emotions is very difficult. Dealing with her emotions is difficult because I'm learning how to self-regulate and work on my own emotions along this journey as well. So there'll be times that she'll be emotional and she'll be frustrated and she'll be crying, and my immediate thought is like, how do I get this to stop? Like, how do I get her to shut up? How do I get her to stop being emotional? How do I get her? And so it's easy to be like, okay, stop doing this or this, right? Like almost like the threats, which doesn't help at all. It doesn't help her calm down at all. And it doesn't help at all in like her growth and her development as a person, right? Because then she's like being like shamed for having emotions. She's like being told like she can't feel certain things. And so all those things have been stuff I've been trying to work on. But I can't work on all of that to the same degree if I don't work on it myself. So, dealing with parenting, what I've noticed is more about learning how to parent myself so that I can show up as a healthy person to my kids. And inside of that, it's dealing with emotions. And one of the pieces inside of emotions that I had to come to the terms with is that there's not good or bad emotions, they just are. And getting used to taking away the shoulds, the shouldn'ts, the goods, the bads, all the things off of emotions, taking all the judgment out of emotions, and just being able to experience them is a completely different and unique aspect to life that I wasn't aware of, that I didn't really dive into. It wasn't this piece that I resonated with or that I could connect with. And so getting to a place of being able to see and adjust and start to feel the emotions and things that are going on has been super helpful for me in order to be able to help my daughter. So in working with this, there'll be times where she'll get really frustrated, really upset. And I have to take the time to be able to sit down and kind of work with it and try to be able to process emotions. Sometimes we'll try to do different calming techniques. Okay, like we'll go like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I don't remember all of them, but like 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, like 3 things you can smell, like whatever it is. So it's going through the senses, trying to find like a way, like let's ground you, let's get you back. And a lot of times that'll work. Sometimes like she's like irate and there's nothing that's gonna happen. Sometimes she just needs a hug. Sometimes she just needs space. And learning how to be able to navigate that, super interesting and a lot of times really challenging for me. Challenging because I suck at like picking up hints a lot of times. I don't do the greatest job at that. I'm getting better, but trying to understand and read between the lines sometimes can be very difficult. So I bring this up because like dealing with narcissism, dealing with like my own emotions, working through all of that makes parenting oftentimes really challenging. Growing up, like there was a piece of like parents and everything like giving affection and love, but maybe not like a ton. Not like it was like devoid of any of it, but it wasn't like over the top, right? So right now my daughter, when she goes to bed, she wants to give me like 30 hugs and like 40 kisses, and it's great. But there's also a piece that's another trigger because I feel it inside of me after like the third round. I'm just like, okay, I'm done. Like, go to bed. Like, let me go work on my stuff. You go to bed. Like that kind of thing. And so I realize it's a piece. And my wife is always like, it's okay. It's all right. Like she just loves you. She just cares about you. And I'm like, I get it, but there's something inside of me that I'm still trying to work on. There's like a trigger there. There's like a piece. I'm just like, okay, enough. You've given me 40 kisses and 30 hugs. That's enough. Go to bed. And it's a piece that I have to be able to work on growing in my emotional capacity to be able to have space. And there's a difference between like boundaries and rules and lines. Yeah, but we're not talking about today. We're just talking about the emotion piece. So I realized that a lot of what I have to do is I have to work on my emotional regulation and my emotional space for how I'm showing up, how I'm communicating, how I'm being effective in what I'm doing, and how I'm teaching that to my kids. It's hard. There's not really like an easy piece where I'm like, I've figured it out. We're still fighting through it piece by piece. But inside of that, what I've realized that the more pieces and more times that I'm triggered with my daughter is all coming back to different pieces that I haven't fixed inside of me. So kids are like this great mirror, right? They're a mirror of like, oh, I do that. I probably shouldn't do that anymore, right? Like I start doing something, she starts doing it, and then we're back in a place where we don't want to be. But inside of this, it's like trying to get to a place of how do I navigate and work through my emotions. One of the biggest tools that I've used to be able to navigate and work through my emotions is stacking. And stacking has a lot of science and tools behind it to be able to shift the mindset. I've talked through some of it inside of different frame videos that we have on Fridays. And I've also talked through it different aspects on a couple lives as well. And it's one of the tools that I use and one of the tools that we coach with as well. But stacking is this tool of being able to shift the mindset and the story, that type of thing. But it also dives in and deals with emotions. It's a place where I can actually dump out and say, okay, this is all the shit that I'm feeling, that I'm dealing with, that I'm going through, that I'm frustrated about. What do I do with it? And being able to take that time to be able to process and think and work through different things has been massively effective and super helpful. Because the more that I'm able to do that, the more I'm able to hold space for my wife and for my daughters. But inside this place of daughters, there's always going to be triggers. I've started to look and started to realize that triggers are never a bad thing. They feel like a bad thing, and oftentimes we talk about them as a bad thing because they're producing a bad outcome or a bad response, right? But at the end of the day, the trigger is just a warning sign, a like lighthouse being like, hey, there's an issue over here. There's a problem. Like there's something that's underneath. So I realize when there's different things that I get triggered emotionally wise from my daughter, that it's triggering something inside of me that still has opportunity to heal, still has opportunity to grow and shift and develop how I show up for me so I can show up for her. Being able to hold space is new, is different, right? Like being able to find like the fine line of like how do I show up in a healthy way versus like just disconnected. Like that piece has been difficult for me to be able to see and understand. Like it's new. It's great. It's wonderful. It's awesome. Like get like little rewards. Like the other day we were snuggling in bed as she was going to bed and she was like, "You're the best dad ever." Like it was cool. It was heartwarming. It was a fun piece inside of our life. Just another piece of like, okay, something, at least something's going right, right? Sometimes it feels like everything's going wrong, but at least something's going right. The emotional safety piece of being able to be an emotionally safe place for your kids is massive. There's pieces that we've noticed like the kids will pick up so easy of shame or guilt or different pieces of just anxiety or stress that is not even intended for us to put on them, but because we haven't dealt with it completely, we have those things spill out. And when they spill out, our kids pick them up and like adhere to them so quickly. So trying to be able to work through, hey, it's okay if you didn't win at this, or hey, it's okay if you're frustrated at this, or hey, it's okay if you can't figure this out. All those pieces of trying to help her like cope and work through different things are massive, but it also is this giant mirror and reflection back to me of like, oh, that was me. This is stuff that I still struggle with at times. How do I work through this for me? How do I work through it for her? So the parenting piece and dealing with emotions is probably, I would say right now, is probably the most challenging. Um, Marriage and dealing with emotions has definitely been a challenge and will continue to be, obviously, because we're growing and developing. But I would say the current one is more so would be with the kids, like getting used to figuring out how to deal with emotions and feelings on that level, and having to raise my sensitivity level. Like that's really what it is. Like my wife has gotten used to pieces of me, right, that the kids aren't used to. Or like my wife and I can have like a playful banter back and forth, or different communication than we can with the 5-year-old. So there's different aspects. But getting used to, okay, I said this and it triggered her. Now I need to go apologize. Or I'm frustrated because of her emotions, and then I'm getting frustrated, and then she's frustrated at me because I'm frustrated at her, and then it all spirals out. So it's always this piece of learning and growing. How do I regulate how I'm showing up, how I'm communicating like in a healthy way? So that's all I got for Saturday. We're just diving in, just talking through some pieces of like parenting, and just kind of like, this is where I'm at right now. So hopefully that helps. If you want to know a little bit more about what I do or what we do here inside of Raw Motivations, you can go to rawmotivations.com. Would love to help you out in any aspect of your healing, your growth, and your development.